Hola, mi gente. Welcome to this very special stream of MSP Unplugged. I am your host, Paco Lebron. This is the place to learn how to run your MSP, whether you're a nimble MSP or leading a team for the journey. This is the place for you. I'm super excited to kick this live stream off. We're going to talk a little bit about TechCon Unplugged, why you should unplug for TechCon Unplugged, and we're going to have a few friends along the way. But Rick wasn't available today to be able to pop in. He may jump in on the car, so I had to ask my good friend, my brother from another mother, who may I be talking about? It is the one, the only, Mr. Juan Fernandez, channel chief over at Super Apps. Juan, how are you today?
Hey, brother, it's so great to be here, and I'm super excited to be on this live stream with you. But I'm also super excited to be coming to TechCon Unplugged right around the corner, my man.
So I actually just ran through to see, all right, how long will it take? How far are we away from TechCon Unplugged? And as my anxiety has shot through the roof, we are now 14 days, 2 weeks away from TechCon Unplugged. And so we're going to be talking a little bit about what does that mean, how a little bit about the event, and just some hopefully value-driven things on why you should go to not only an event, but also why TechCon Unplugged may be an avenue or an area for you to help scale your business and get to that next level. As we always talk about, getting onto that MSP journey, no matter where you are. And so, Juan, for those that may not know who you are, which I find it hard to believe, why don't you share a little bit about yourself on kind of your journey and how you got over to Super House?
Yeah, and I would say, and again, Paco, it's for those that are out there that are looking for a place. I built my own MSP, obviously, and scaled it to success and exited. But I think the thing that I admire the most about that journey was meeting wonderful people along the road, stumbling across great shows and communities such as TechCon Unplugged. And, you know, it's been wonderful to be a part of it. And I think that as I exited my business, one of the things that I wanted to make sure that I contribute back to was this thing called community. I recognized that there wasn't a lot of people that were there to help me in my journey, that were willing to talk about things, to share things openly. They were kind of thought, man, why is this guy talking to me? What does he want? And it just was weird. And I really appreciate the communities that I feel like are very open and welcoming and allow MSPs to have hard conversations. And TechCon Unplugged, your show and your podcast has been amazing. And I'm just honored to be a part of it and to be able to allow MSPs. And that's why I contribute and share. And so I want to be not just a part of it from a community perspective, but also making sure that MSPs find success and have best practices and people that they can lean on. So, you know, us coming to the event is one part of our contribution back now that I am at SuperOps, helping build this future of managed services. But at the other end of it, it's supporting the community that supports those that need the help. So for those that are joining us today, if you haven't listened to the Papa's podcast or you haven't heard the stuff that him and Rick talk about, I highly suggest that you do because it's really good stuff. And it's an honor to be a contributor and been able to be on the show and also be at the event. Also give back.
Yeah, and that's really what the event is all about. And I think for us, when we first came out with the event, it kind of spawned off of at the time, really of the voices of the MSP journey wasn't being listened to across all parts of a journey. And I think that that's a different experience for someone who is starting off, someone who is doing it by themselves, to leading a team, as I mentioned in the intro as well. And so, being able to be a part of something where we really wanted to focus on how do we allow for our information and our experiences to give back and provide value. And so I think back in the time where, I'm talking almost 10 years ago, 2015, we attended this one event. It was very high level, but it did not seem that there was much care for all those stages in the journey, as I mentioned before. And so we just decided, okay, well, if we're not being heard, we need to create some type of avenue, some type of ability to communicate and share so that we can go ahead and result ourselves to be better than where we are now. So some wanted to be able to continue how they were doing and how do they become a little bit more efficient? How do they become a little bit better? Some wanted to be able that had goals and wanted to figure out how to get there, but without that knowledge in between. And so it allowed us to, at least for myself, to start that journey with a couple folks and really start inviting people on, meeting a lot of great people. And what we've learned over the last several years is, this community called the channel has allowed us to really do be vulnerable, do allow to be sharing and really providing input on what they're doing from their particular journey. And so really for us, we have this tagline, which is a little bit cliche, but it's bringing the IT community together. And I'll go into a little bit more about what that means. But, speaking on the MSP front first, it allows us to say, all right, you're coming to an event that you really are going to have some takeaway action items. I think that we come to certain events and we have all the best intention, but sometimes we just don't know kind of where to go. We may lose ourselves. We may go through processes that we think we want to learn something, but really we need to be on this side of the house. And
Yeah.
so really trying to figure out that piece for us, what we've done is over the years really started to listen to those attendees on what they want to do. And so what we were able to do is be able to not only get like-minded MSP peers, but those that really were doing this thing. And so, being able to be in the trenches, understanding what's going on, and really focusing on the ability of saying, hey, I've been there. Here's my experiences. You can take it or leave it, but I think I know where you're coming from. And I think here are the little pieces that I can help you through that part to the point of where you're ready to learn at that particular stage to take on that bit of knowledge that you require. And so really for us, being able to do that, being vulnerable and being able to share that was not being done quite a bit, and now over the years has been adopted more and more for those that really do want to help. And so I know that there was a phrase you have once used with me where it's like people learn when they're ready to learn. And I'm paraphrasing to how you had said it because you say it much more eloquently, but there's a piece to that and there's an understanding to that where sometimes you could rehear something for the third time and it clicks, or you are now
Yeah.
understood it differently. Can you share a little bit more about kind of like where community and education comes to in a point of, hey, when you're coming to something like this, you may be a returning attendee, and you may be hearing some of the same vendors that have been returned that have been grateful with gracious with their time and their support of the event, but hearing something again, maybe in a different facet or a different stage of your life, may go a long way by returning.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest challenges we have is just as people, right? I've taught a lot and I've done a lot of sessions. I remember one that I did years, about a year ago, where I started teaching, and I said, how many of you have a sales process? Raise your hand. Everyone raised their hand. And then I started teaching sales, and one of the guys in the front was like, hey man, don't you think it's kind of weird that we all told you we had a sales process and then you're over here teaching us sales? And I said, let me ask you a question. How many of you here have learned something? And the entire room, including that gentleman, raised his hand. And I said, so is it weird? Or he's like, yeah, but most of us believe we had one, and then you just decided to assume we didn't. And I said, but if you're learning something, it's not the assumption of the things that you're learning. It's that your mind is ready to learn now. Maybe then, because you thought you had something, you were not willing to open yourself up to learning. The fact that you're in this environment sitting here means you're ready to learn. So even though I asked you something and you responded a certain way, it didn't mean you weren't ready to learn. And that's what I'm embracing. And I think that that's what we have to think about, right? We have to look at, people are coming to learn. And if they're coming to learn, we need to be able to give them something to learn. Even if I feel like I've done something well for my entire time, there's no business that's standing here today that is future proofed and built themselves in a way that will evolve for new technologies that will arrive in 10 to 20 years. Like, you can't say I'm building a methodology right now that's going to last forever, because it's always an iterative process in business building, right? So with that mindset, we have to recognize that it's a constant state of learning, and we said this at MSP Community Minds, right? It's, that
Mhm.
the industry has changed. We're moving forward. We must change our thinking. We must change our ideas. We must change our businesses. We must change our processes. And that's where I think we have to adopt those things when we come to events, and we have to be thinking about them a little bit differently and looking for those nuggets of things that we can learn. But again, thanks to you. I mean, you're bringing together a lot of great people to be able to deliver on some of those newer nuances and be able to educate on new ways of thinking and new ways of doing business. And I think that that's what it takes. And for those people that, I recognized years and years and years and years ago when I was in my IT career, and, you guys, everyone can harken back to the moment, right? Like, and I used to be afraid of it. I ran from stagnation because I called it death behind the desk. I didn't want to die behind the desk because I watched so many IT people stop learning the new technology back in the early 90s and 2000s, where they're like, oh, this is good enough. No, it wasn't. Technology moved past them, and the next thing you know, they worked for me, right? And that
Mm,
scared the hell out of me. And I thought, okay, well, I better stay technically sharp. I better stay technically relevant. I better stay on top of compliance and regulatory aspects. And that has fueled me the way I am today. And so I'm always looking for those newer nuances. And I think that if we have that learning mindset and we continue to learn, we can also continue to educate, because that's a lot of what our customers need. And so
so it's
I think
so
that's
it's
a
funny.
key piece. And
No, I was gonna say, like, to carry on to what you're saying, I think that that's an amazing point where sometimes you want to be able to scale, or you want to be able to learn a skill set or a new just educate yourself on something that may be overwhelming and you don't know where to start. I would give you a perfect example: Microsoft, right? Everyone wants to be able to dive into the Microsoft realm and understand, do certifications make sense, does it make sense, how do I get started, and things of that nature. And so
sure.
for us, especially for the smaller MSPs, trying to figure out, okay, well, how do I get better? How do I get to be able to get to a point where I can educate myself and now be able to actually give back once I've learned? And so,
Yeah.
I spoke with a good friend of ours, Matt Lee, Cyber Matt Lee, over at PaxSate. And so, he when I first met him, and I put this on a LinkedIn post, that, I was one of those where, I knew I definitely was not smart enough or smart to the point of the level of how of understanding of certain things. And so he was able to really break that down for me. And I think back our second show, I said, hey, look, I know you do this for PaxSate. Would there be any chance you could do the same securing the modern workplace, but a Microsoft boot camp? And so he went ahead. He said, absolutely, let's do it. He went ahead. We went through it, and a lot of attendees attended, and got so much from it. And so I actually want to bring on someone that actually participated in that boot camp.
All
And
right.
also, I want to be able to communicate on how she expanded her business and kind of her experience from going through that in TechCon and where her business is now. And who am I talking about? I am speaking about Diana Giles over at Skyline IT Management. Diana, how are you?
Great. How are you guys?
Hey,
Oh, you know what I
Diana.
like to say: better than good, better than most.
I should have known the answer to that.
But Diana, I wanted to, and I appreciate you coming on here. As we mentioned, there'll be some guests popping in and out, but you actually attended our TechCon Unplugged in Chicago, where we had our first Microsoft boot camp that was done by Matt Lee. And I just remember, like, out of all the attendees, you were so focused on obtaining and absorbing all that information from Matt Lee. And then I just happened to see how you just flourished with that information over the year, and now giving back to the community with your knowledge. Can you just go over a little bit about, like, how was that experience kind of attending that boot camp? Why was it important for you to attend, and, like, what did you get out of it, and how has it expanded your business?
Sure. It was really good timing for me. That was my first time to come to TechCon. And I was actually at that time working on my Microsoft 365 admin expert certification. I was just kind of in the middle of all that. And so when I saw that you were having that particular, I think it was a pre-day.
Yep.
Um, yeah. And when that was going to be part of it, I was already going to be coming, but I wanted to make sure I attended that part of it for sure. And I probably was the most enthusiastic simply because it really was what I was in the thick of at the time trying
Mm,
to learn. And so I was, that was why I was very, excited about it. But Matt, of course, makes it very applicable, because when you're studying for those kind of certifications, they're very geared toward the enterprise, which, a lot of it is relevant, but a lot of it isn't. And Matt was able to bring it to the level that was appropriate for small business, and really focus on the things that, it might not have necessarily helped me on the exam as much as, I mean, of course it did, but it was certainly relevant to what I needed to be doing for my clients when I was going to be implementing the product. So I guess the second kind of part of your question is, how has it expanded my business? I really just saw what was coming, thanks to PaxAid and these kind of training sessions like what you all provided. Just how Microsoft Cloud for small business really added so much for what small businesses were able to have. Just that enterprise level of security that was kind of out of reach for them for so long. And so I just kind of really embraced that. I really like the platform. I like what it's able to do for my clients, moving them off of servers, or even in a lot of the cases for my clients, because I was starting out so small and am still small, but a lot of my clients are small. Even just a 1-2 person real estate company, they can have a really premier uh, configuration for their office. And so I just saw the benefit for even those very, very small entrepreneurs and people like that I'd done business with for years.
Yeah, I mean, there's such a big piece to that, like you said, is not only being able to provide them that premier configuration and support that they can have in their tool stack, but also setting them up on the right path. So as they decide whether they do or don't want to scale, it's there. And so, and now they have the ability of your support to help further that along. Um, Juan, I know that, you, when at your time of, at your growing the MSP practice, you know, scaling is a big thing for a lot of us. I think a lot of us have big goals to be able to scale, and there's some that are trying to figure out what they want to do with their journey. How did you make the decision for yourself of like, you know what, I want to make sure that my clients are in a good footing, but I want to make sure I get as much adoption as possible? How did that mindset come from on your end, and decided, hey, you know what, I want to make sure I get to toward as many markets as possible because these people need it, because they need this high class support that maybe not being offered by other MSPs of the same caliber?
I think exactly, what we did. And again, I talk a lot about, customers' needs and wants, right? Everybody wants a lot of things, but they actually need some things that they don't always know they need. And to the point that like even Diana is doing right now, she's dipping into like that that broad brush of specialty and getting some of that Microsoft ink so that she can actually paint a new picture for her customers. And that creates that delicate nuance of that competitive advantage, right? And so when you're specialized in a way that delivers a business outcome, that was the way that I focused on, as I was looking to be very different than everybody else, but being high value to my customer to a point that I was elevating their business to a whole new level through the thoughtful use of technology, as I say all the time, right? It doesn't matter what it is I do, it's how I help your business grow, scale, achieve, become profitable. And so even though Diana is saying, hey, I'm starting down here and I'm learning these things, she's learning an essential skill to increase productivity and to enable the modern workforce and to generate profitability, right? So like all those key components are translatory aspects of how you bring a competitive advantage to market. And I love the fact that she says, it's fun to watch everyone's journey. Like I learned it here and now I'm transforming businesses here. And that's where I think TechCon does a good job, because to your point earlier, Paco, we don't know what we don't need to know that we don't know, right? And so when you come to an event, you might be closed-minded, like I already know what I need to know. Well, Diana was like thinking I need to know something new. Maybe I don't know everything, right? And that's the mindset you have to have. If you're going to migrate your business from where you're at, you have to have a changed mindset. You have to be thinking about, how do I do things differently? How do I, Because if I'm trying to be like everyone else and I'm doing the same things, I lose my competitive advantage. I just land up competing on price. So like I said, for me, I knew what my customers needed and I knew the industries that I was going to serve with those. And I created products and services that were specific to those customer types. So in the case of Diana, I would have taken this, cloud optimization bundle along with security and compliance. And I would have wrapped that together as a package and I would have taken that to the industry types that it met and been able to activate those components. So I think all of it matters, right? It's just how you approach it. And that's the way I did it. And still do it today the same way.
Gotcha. Now, Diana, you're a returning attendee. You're also on our content committee meeting, committee, as we are trying to not only come up with content that is relevant for every size type MSP, but also making sure that the content is relevant. And so, being that you have returned for the last several years, can you kind of go into how you're probably every business who is going into an event probably has some type of item or structure or some type of thing in their business they want to improve. And, whether that's, they got to get their sales and marketing up to line, whether that is something with operational efficiency or trying to understand their numbers, maybe trying to expand themselves a little bit further in the security space, or maybe trying to automate certain things. Do you find yourself, as you go to attend events, including TechCon, do you have some type of frame of mind of what you're trying to improve in your business, or are you looking to see what does that event have to offer for you to decide, okay, you know what, I think this is something I need to take home from this event today?
Yes, when I'm considering which events to go to, of course, I'll always look at the agenda or the list of speakers and see if there's going to be enough topics that are going to be relevant to what I'm looking for. Obviously, not every session is going to be the most applicable to every person, but I will try to find, are they going to be covering the things that I'm most interested in working on right now? And I feel like, for me, it's always kind of the same things lately. It's been process improvement and marketing. Those, seem to be the things that I struggle with the most, probably because I struggle to spend the most time on those because I'm always spending time on other things. And so maybe I need to attend a session on time management. But the thing that, with TechCon, the sessions are always very content forward, I find, and even when they're presented by a vendor, the vendors know, and the ones that have been the most successful, I think, at TechCon, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but that have gotten the most positive feedback have been the ones that have really been, content forward. They're providing content, and that content really is their sales pitch. It's not a sales pitch. It's, hey, we realize you need this information. We want to provide value for you and, show you what a great company we are because of that, because we understand your needs, not because it's just a session on, all about their product. So I think those are the ones that are most successful. But also a lot of the sessions are either in combination with a panel or something else, a presentation from peers. And the really nice thing I think about TechCon as far as the peer goes, because we all really like those hallway conversations and the peer discussions, but even the larger, because there's a wide variety of levels to the MSPs, and not just MSPs, but I guess IT service providers that are there. Some of them, have one employee, and then some of them may have over 20. But the thing that I feel like, in a way, that we have in common is that even that one, that MSP that might have 20 plus employees right now can remember what it was like to be the one. There's just a lot of us that have moved, or a lot of the people that are there overall that have moved up the, in the growth of their business, and it makes everybody relatable. Even if you are that really large MSP now, they just remember what it was like to be the solo MSP perhaps. And so the information that is shared among peers is also really valuable.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much I want to unpack for what you said, because you've hit on quite a few things there. The first one is, the ability of feeling like you belong. I think that we have this thing where you attend an event, and sometimes, some are a little clicky. Sometimes you have some crews that are kind of rolling together, not by their own fault, right? They just kind of have just got together. They just have, gone to this type of event over and over again, and so we do have a lot of our TechCon Unplugged champions that will try, if someone's hugging the wall, we'll try and pull them through, and try and conversate a little bit better, so that everyone does feel like they belong. I think that's the first one is, can you feel like you belong to a particular community? I think Michael Cooley over at Cream City Consulting, for those that may know him as Taz Cools, had this one thing that he said when he first came into either the first TechCon or the second TechCon was, I love this event because it's an event where I'm getting my learning on, I got my education, but it's like I'm meeting my friends every year again. And so it allows, and it goes back into, as you mentioned, that hallway conversation, the water cooler talk, the ability to learn real life discussions where those are where they're happening. And I think that it's either from experiences, conversations that may have peaked from tool sets that are being used or services that they're trying to figure out, even down to the operations of trying to figure out what to do in their business. There's something that just tends to spark some type of nugget that reinvigorates a business owner when attending a type of event like this. And then most importantly, you mentioned the way that the style of the event, and as you mentioned, we do have peer presentations, we have panels, we have good friends of mine from the channel that are coming in that may not represent a vendor at this time, but have MSP experience, giving their kind of their take on how to run a business, how to do certain things. And then we do have vendor partners that are respecting the understanding that this is now for you to gain your industry or sector adoption. You have to lead in with education because for two reasons. One, nobody likes to be sold, but people do like to buy. And then the other part about it as well is that being able to say, hey, here's what you can do to help yourself, and if there's anything I can do, you let me know. And now they've opened that door for a two-way conversation where someone who does want the ability to support a partner, and establish relationships is where that goes so much further, because people love to do business with people they like. And I think it offers an opportunity for us to not only just expand great partnerships, but also have the ability to know that that person who you've developed that rapport has you in mind and knows that, hey, you know what, I think this is going to be able to help you out, or here, this is what you're going to be able to do there. I'll give you a perfect example. Michael Crean, who heads over the new division, professional service division of Sonic Wall, but at the time was known as Solutions Granted. And I was with a buddy. We went down the vendor hall. There was something about a Google Workspace encryption or something of that nature. He stopped in his tracks. He looked down the hall, and he happened to see our good friend Matt Scully at the company he was working at the time. And he said, you know what? We're going to go talk to him, and grabbed my buddy and walked him over to the vendor hall to talk to Scully, to talk about the solution at the time. And so it just tells you how being that relationship and that rapport. So now in my buddy's head, he's like, I don't know how, I don't know when, but I'm going to do business with him, because it just built that opportunity that he cared enough for him to understand that, hey, we may not be a fit, but I know someone here that I respect, and I'm going to hand you off to someone that is going to take care of you. And I think there's a lot of that happens in our industry. And then also being able to break that down to the point, at least at TechCon, so that you're not being talked at in front of a presentation all day. We got half the day where you'll be in front of audience, and then the other half of the day we're going to give you breakout sessions and workshops that are going to adhere to you, whether that, again, as I mentioned, sales and marketing, you're going to have financial literacy and operational efficiency, or down to security, AI, and automation by some really cool people that know what they're talking about. And we've seen in the spaces as well that they have been making an impact from there. It's kind of the same way as how I developed that relationship with Juan Fernandez. I mean, Juan ended up reaching out to me one day, and we had been kind of circling each other at the time. We had a conversation during, I think it's just, I don't know how many years ago now, and literally just stood there for about an hour just talking about everything and anything while he was at his MSP. And because of that relationship and over the years, knowing his rapport, his character, and being able to say, you know what, I want to support you in everything that you do because you have helped me in such a long way, and thus being able to just help on all fronts, whether that's the MSP, whether that's MSP Unplugged. It's the nature of relationship building that you can get from things like this that goes such a long way. Juan, I don't know if there's anything you want to add on that big ramble I just had.
No, and I love it, right? Because I personally, like I say, you got to be who you wish you had when you needed them, right? And that's what I do, is just try to be an ear. And you never know where somebody's at. You never know what challenges they're dealing with, and if you got relevant information that might help them out in some way. I was talking with a gentleman yesterday, and he's dealing with the business, and I said, hey, look, I'm willing to give you some time to help you think through how this solves your problems, and here's some of the key things that I think you can try. And he was like, man, I never thought about any of that. I said, here's the thing though, you have to promise me if this works. Even if it doesn't work, you go take that same information, you go share that with somebody else. That's all you got to do, is just pass forward. And he's like, that's it? Like, that's all you want? And I'm like, that's what community is, man. Like, helping each other. And so I think that it's key, right? And I've talked to tons of folks, and I love talking to them, because even though my journey, whether I succeeded or I failed, can help somebody. And I think that that's what's really essential, to recognize that maybe we haven't been a huge success in our careers. Maybe we are struggling through things. That's okay. So is somebody else, right? You can find a friend in those moments, and maybe you have had success. You know what? Hey, great, share it. Maybe somebody else hasn't. And so I think that that's where it's really essential. And again, just like you and just like Diana, me and Diana sat down and talked for a while as well. Like, she may have gotten something from me, she may have not, but it's okay. It's a matter of all of us learning together and all of us moving forward, right? And I think that that's what's really important here. And so I love the fact that the community is so strong at your event, and how well it's done. And that's why we continue to invest, even at Super Ops, even when I was, the MSP Growth Coalition doing my stuff, or even in between when I was just investing in things. So it's important to maintain that and to keep that community going. So hopefully the folks that hear this now are going to be joining us. I can't wait. And that's where I think the attendees don't recognize that you're part of the community, right? Like, that's the whole thing. You come, you are. And then that's where they have to embrace that moment to understand that they are an active contributor to something special. So again, kudos to those that are coming. I can't wait to meet everybody that's going to be there. But that's my thought, man. We are community, period.
Yeah, and I love that part where you mentioned that, sometimes conversations just spark something to kind of for the give back, right? And then I'm gonna go over to Diana again, because not only has Diana contributed in not only on her technical skills and helping those now understand Microsoft in a different fashion, because we have a brain for like technical knowledge, but sometimes we just can't gather what it means. And Diana, I've heard from other people who work with Diana or spoke with Diana that she helps break it down so they can understand it. But Diana also from conversating with a lot of community, understood there was a need for talking about something completely different that is not talked a lot about in the industry, and that's the health, and both physical, mental, spiritually, and launched her own way and her own media to be able to kind of expose that, and launching her podcast for the health of IT, and really really having those conversations of all aspects of health. And because I think that it was such a need where we've had sessions, we've had people talk about it, but there's never been something consistent that has been really front of mind for that. And I imagine, Diana, this is what made you had that calling for you to do this. And we are going to have a panel about this as well. But can you talk a little bit about like, again, that spark, the wanting to be able to give back in your own way? Can you talk a little bit about how that is, and maybe even a plug for the podcast as well?
Sure. Well, thank you for that. It was just something that had been on my mind, just kind of, in the back of my mind. I really never thought, well, I couldn't even imagine being on a podcast, much less having one. But then I'd been on, a few kind of Marvin's podcast. It was probably the first one, I guess. And somehow it came into my mind. I do know the renewal for my domain for the healthofit.tech just came through. So I must have been thinking about it at least a year ago because I got the domain. But it took me some encouragement from Marvin and just, other people and kind of getting up the courage to launch it. But I launched it, I think, about in May this year. And it's just one of those things that there are a lot of tech podcasts out there, and this one is not technical, but it is something that I just continued to hear conversations and different stories. Maybe it was a presentation. I know Nigel Moore's video from several years back had an impact on me, just when people would tell their stories, either about how they had struggled with depression or just a dark time in their life. Maybe they were trying to cope with running their business and trying to cope by drinking too much and just the various things they found themselves acting out in anger, and then of course physical, we have a weight problem, I think, in society as a whole. I don't know if it's higher in our industry or not, but we do have very sedentary jobs, and so it was just a combination of these things, and it came to me over time. And I decided to, rather than think about it, do something. And it is a way that I can give back, because the IT community has really given a lot to me. I remember, when I very first went to a conference in 2019, just how encouraging everybody was. And it really, really has helped me. And everybody has always been so willing to help me. And I don't feel like I'm the smartest person in the room by any means, so I don't ever feel like I'm able to give that much back, and this is a way that I can.
And I want to say congratulations on that, because it's a big step to take, and it's often, it's just like starting a business. You never know if it's going to work out, but your passion to do it is commendable, and so congratulations on that. It's not easy to do, and I know it's hard, so keep going. That's awesome, Diana.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to talk about it too, Paco.
Of course.
Yeah, so you guys need to subscribe, man. That's we got to make sure that they subscribe. What was the name of the podcast again, Diana?
For the Health of IT, and the website is forthehealthofit.tech. So
awesome.
Yep. And a lot of people think that running a podcast is easy, and I will tell you it is not. So for those that try to launch, you'll notice to see who comes and who goes, and the term that they like to say is pod fade. So I will implore you to subscribe, because again, it is not easy to run a podcast. I'll tell you that much after 10 years. So, but yeah, no. So I think for us here, the goal of this session, this live stream, is really to communicate the fact of the old adage of you need to work on your business and not in your business. And the only way you're going to be able to work on your business is you have to unplug yourself, at least for a time, to really look into it as an overarching structure to say, all right, you have two phases of your life. And when you're looking at your business, in my opinion, you either are content with how everything is going, or you're so fed up that you need to figure out how to make a change. And until you get to those two phases, there really isn't going to be much that you're going to do, because if you're content with what you have, things are going to how you had preferred it to go. You're not really looking to make any big changes or introduce any new items, and you're perfectly okay with how it is. There is that technology structure, but you go along your own pace. But then there are those that are slamming their head against a wall. They're trying to figure out how to get this thing to work, and they just can't figure it out. And I'm talking about those MSPs that are just starting out. There are MSPs that are well over making however much in revenue, whether that's going to be in the tens of thousands, even over the millions. They have somehow got to this number by hook, line, and really trying to just stretch themselves over to the point where they're a rubber band about to snap, and they're trying to figure out how to get some alleviation of this pressure. When you get to that point, you have to take a holistic approach and really look into what you're going to do. We talk about the fourth quarter living series with MSP Unplugged. We've talked about unplugging yourself to be able to go to an event. the biggest piece of it is that you have to be able to have the ability to see what resources are available to you, and is how important is it for you to for the succession of your business. Because yes, you are going to miss a couple of days of doing work. Your business is not going to fall on fire. It's not going to burn to the ground after just 2.5 days. Your business is not going to cause a huge problem. Clients are not going to be leaving you left and right if you're taking the time to really gain that perspective of what's next for my business. And you're not going to do that until you unplug. Our hope is that TechCon Unplugged will give you that opportunity. We have a lot of opportunity of learning. We have a lot of opportunities for relationship building. We have a lot of opportunities to have a little bit of fun, because we want to make sure that you understand that this is a place for you. Now, we're going to go over the agenda a little bit here very quickly. We'll go in for some last words. I don't think we're going to have any additional final guests here unless we have our good MC Marvin B popping in, but I don't think he will. But if you haven't heard Marvin B, he's over at the IT Business Podcast. You're in for a treat. If you were not at the Unconvention DC, that's when he showed, at least to our immediate crew, his emceeing skills. That's why we had to bring him to be the MC over at MSP Unplugged the last several years. The man is dynamic. The man knows how to have fun, but he also knows how to educate as well. So glad to know that he's in part of our community. But if you haven't heard him, he's going to be a great time. He's going to really round out the show as we move forward here. But, we're going to be kicking this thing off on Thursday. We do have our welcome reception. However, my good friend, Mr. Fernandez, is bringing the Super Summit over to us in Hanover, Maryland, and on the greater Washington, D.C. area, but Hanover, Maryland, it's in the area. But it's going to be a great time, because if you have not been to a Super Summit, it's one of the events that is pure education. There's no pitches. There's nothing to buy. All it is pure education for you on particular aspects of your business. We're going to have Rex Frank. Wait, no, Rex Frank? Rex Frank. You know what is funny? Because I always mix up Brad Gross and Rex Frank for some reason. I always have Rex Frank. I swear to you, every time on everything on our keynotes, and sorry Rex for this, but we always go ahead on our run of show, and it's always Rex Gross. And so every time they're trying to find his email, or they're trying to find like his headshot, hey, I don't see a Rex Gross, and I'm like, oh my god. So Rex, my apologies. You'll understand on the bus ride home when we were in that Uber from the Super Summit in Dallas. But the point is that Rex Frank will be there. He is the VP of Pax8 Academy, and he has a great session on how to educate yourself on understanding the stages of your business. We're going to have the returning Marnie Stockman, who was with us last year, and educating us on all things of leadership and being able to just dive into her perspective of how to ensure account management and customer management is done the right way. We're going to have Juan's session of quarter in, quarter out for the Super Summit. And then we're going to also may have a surprise guest as well, rounding out that Super Summit as well. You never know who might show up at the Super Summit. They're all not the same. So if you've been to one, great. You may want to catch this one as well, because you never know. There may be some surprises along the way. We also have our welcome reception, welcoming everyone in Thursday night. And then again, as I mentioned, we're going to have 2 full days of great content. We're going to have our presentations in front with some amazing presentations with a lot of great vendor and industry channel friends. We're going to have our breakout sessions depending on what you are interested in. It's going to be the marketing. It's going to be the security. It's going to be sales. There's got to be something that you feel that you need some help in. We have the great people to talk to you as well, whether it's a fellow peer or someone who's been doing this for quite some time and has some pretty great services along the way. And then my exciting piece, and I love this, is we're going to round it out, because this is, if I have not mentioned, this is our 5th annual show. So we're going to round it out in the best way that I can say it is, if you're going to go into this thing called entrepreneurship, running an MSP, you got to bet on yourself. And so the only safest gamble that you can make is on yourself. And so we're going to be closing it out with a great casino night. And we're going to make sure that we're going to have a great time for not only conversation, building relationships, but also those learning lessons so that you can go ahead and take them home, because it's going to be a great way to round out the show. And I've also been told Mr. Juan Fernandez may be coming up with a new session title that's going to help us kick into rounding out the show of what you've learned as well. So I implore you, take a look at the event. Feel free to talk to anyone here. We've had a great content committee who have built a lot of this for us, and we appreciate it. Diana is one of them, and we appreciate they spend a lot of time every Friday giving their time to just really discuss what's relevant for their size MSP. So this is going to be speaking to a lot of you. So with that, Juan, any final words that you have for before we round out the episode here?
I'm really excited about this event. I think we talked a little bit about, that forward-thinking mindset and really looking at what the future of managed services holds. I can tell you right now, the sessions that you guys have, I looked at the agenda, are fire. And I know that little fire emoji is your favorite, Paco, and I can't wait to hear a little bit more about that for those that don't know. It's really wonderful, and I can't wait to see everybody there. We're going to be doing some really fun and exciting things. And I think that those that join us at this event will definitely walk away with new ways of thinking, new ways to, improve their business, generate revenue, and look at things a little bit differently and help us move this industry forward. So that's my thoughts. I know that Diana probably has a few thoughts too.
We are all ears.
I hope so. Better come up with something, right? Well, one of the things I was just thinking was, there's some people, I'm looking forward to seeing some people that only come to at least the conference we have in common is this one. And so, I go to other conferences and they may or may not, but this is the only one that I have in common with them. And so I'm looking forward to seeing them. And then, last year I was helping out the Tech Tribe quite a bit. And so I was hanging out with Andrea from the Tech Tribe. And I feel like last year, I loved meeting her and hanging out with her. That was awesome. And it was good to have another, girl at the conference because there's not as many usually. But, I am looking forward to spending more time with my peers this year because I did miss out a little bit on that last year. So I'm excited about that. And of course, just to go to the sessions and to decompress and talk to other peers, because the conversations that we have sometimes are valuable because they may be about a tool that we use or a service that we use or a vendor or something like that, or a process you do in your business. But sometimes it really is just beneficial to talk to somebody else who knows what you go through. That, it's just different to talk to someone else who's doing what you do. And so that's another really valuable part of it that is not necessarily, marketed for the conference. It's not something you put on the website of the conference, but it is a valuable part, I think.
No, I agree 100%. I think that, it's funny. I just talked to, my very first mentor, David Nelson. I mentioned him in my post quite a bit. He's the one that actually helped me understand how it is to work inside of a business environment. Being raised in a particular area of my neighborhood, we didn't understand how certain things go. And so he helped me navigate that landscape over the years, and I owe him quite a bit. And we just talked about how what you just mentioned, Diana, is having the ability of seeing someone like yourself, whether that is persona, characteristic, even down to, same attributes and beliefs. It goes a long way on understanding that how you want to either perceive information or receive it. And so it allows for us for myself where, hey, if I see someone like myself and they're in a position of where I want to be, I want to learn as much as I can from that person. And and I have been blessed in the way of being able to do it in reverse, where people who they have been able to relate to me, I've been able to share my life lessons to them and help them as they go along. And so what I will say to that is, there will be something for you. There will be somebody for you. There is always someone that's willing to share. And it's just a matter of taking that approach, and that it's going to be a risk. You're going to have to make that leap into being able to say, I want to do this. And when you do, you will be able to benefit from a lot of the giving that happens in our channel, no matter where you are in the stage of your business. So with that, I will say that if you are interested in TechCon Unplugged, you can join us. Head over to techconunplugged.com. You can also use the coupon code MSP75 to get a discount off of your code. We have made this very known in the community. If you are looking to attend the event, but there's for some reason you're unable to make it. There could be a variety of reasons. Feel free to reach out to me directly, and we can figure out something on how to make sure that we can get you to that event as well. Because again, this is a community event. The tagline is bringing the IT community together, and it would not be without you for coming in to attend and enjoy and be a part of this thing we call TechCon Unplugged. So appreciate everyone tuning in. Thank you so much for your time, and we will see you next time on MSP Unplugged.